You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If Conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting from North Idaho in an actual free state. I happen to be your conservative Sherpa, guiding you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Please note what you're about to hear tonight consists of my opinion and my opinion only, and those of my guests. I say that because it's true and it buttresses the if-then equation. What am I doing? I'm doing the job that the American media maggots won't. I am fundamentally changing America one leftist diaper at a time. Wham. What we don't do is we don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversations. We are still serving stiff drinks here in the saloon, along with facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, clarity, tradition, and that really weird thing called common sense. For normal people like you and me, politics, religion, crime, culture, race, sex, science, economics, law, we talk about it all right here at the saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. I've got about 10 people watching live for me right now. That's great, especially at the beginning of the show. I am streaming live right now. I should tell you. I'll show you where. Spreaker, podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I'm streaming on Facebook Live. I'm streaming live right now on Twitch, on YouTube Live, on Rumble, at the SHR Media Group, on X, on my X, at BZ's Saloon. Also on Sean Lewis's X, at Two Against Tyranny. And on KLRN Radio, at KLRN Radio. We are all right here, doing it all for you and me and the tree and everybody else. It is February the 13th, the year of our Lord 2025. I am super happy that you are here. Somebody already made a comment in chat. Hey, look, it was me. Just welcoming people. You moron. Get a load of get a life, get a room. Hey, by the way, for all you Gaiuses out there, you know what tomorrow is, and I'm going to give you a heads up. It's free. It's not going to cost you a darn thing. And that's this. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So don't be silly, stupid, and fattening and forget something. And a long time ago, when I got my starter marriage, that went away in the mid to late 80s. Now I'm in a real marriage, and we got married in 2007. So 18 years ago, me and Mrs. BZ were marido, and I chose something that would serve me well for the rest of my life, or at least it has so far. We got married on Valentine's Day. So even the stupid, ugly, fat guy can remember when Valentine's Day is. So anyway, welcome to the saloon. It is great to see everybody here. And as per normal, my show revolves around politics. To a great degree, this one does too. But the other thing about that is tonight it's also going to deal with some of the politics of law enforcement. Politics of law enforcement in every one of your areas. And I have a great guest that has been here before, and that is Dan Wilson. And that applies to me and him and you. And as I I had him on, probably 5 times last year. I had a whole bunch of discussions with Dan Wilson. And as I explained on prior shows, conflict already rages all across the nation with regard to sheriffs versus chiefs of police, two very kind of different types of law enforcement and heads of office. And I'd like to remind everyone, because we're going to go there tonight, particularly these days in a post-Joe Vegetable world, that sheriffs are elected, chiefs of police are appointed. Very important to remember. Sheriffs answer to the electorate. Chiefs of police answer to whatever appointing authority exists, whether it's a strong mayor, a city council, a city manager, or some form of authority with the lawful ability and authority to make such appointments. So sheriffs answer to the people. Chiefs of police answer to whomever is the biggest political animal in the room at the time. And that accounts for a redoubled political push in a number of leftist cities and states to simply eliminate the position of sheriff wholesale itself. And I kind of dislike being a member of the Department of Redundancy Department, but all of this bears repeating in these turbulent times, which, as a preface to Dan Wilson's appearance tonight, I do want to remind everyone of. We will get to Dan. And again, Dan is in the background. He's already, like I've said, he's cleaned his fish tank. He's balanced his checkbook. Dan doesn't do checkbooks. Come on, let's be serious. But it's precisely because the sheriff answers to the electorate and not to a board of supervisors or a county executive or a mayor or a city manager, any of that kind of stuff, that these concerns are resurfacing. And don't think that they're going away just because we happen to elect Donald John Trump, OMB, Orange Man Bad, the guy with the dead orange cat in his head, on November 5th. Don't think that any of this stuff is going away, because the fight is just beginning. And the fight is everywhere. And Dan is back tonight because all politics is local. I am. He is. He ran last year as a constitutional sheriff for the county where I live. And that's why all of this is pertinent and directly applicable. That and other topics that we're going to be addressing during the show. Power and control, control and power, and money, big money. It's all about money. It's when people say it's not about the money, of course, it's about the money. And that was nowhere better illustrated than during 2020, during the COVID-19 lockdown, or as I call it, the Wuhan 19 lockdown. Police chiefs bent over and used their authority in what I believe was an unconstitutional way. They are enforcers of these policies, whatever the mayor, strong, whatever it is, to be named later. They bend to the political prevailing prairie winds, whoever and whatever that is. And so when there was pushback, you see, it didn't come from chiefs of police. They just did what their asses were told. It came from sheriffs, constitutional sheriffs, elected sheriffs. And it holds true today that for policies regarding like illegal invaders, rampant crime, homeless, all sorts of other politicized topics, that truly in this country, none of that shit should be. I'm sorry. I said I'd try to calmate today and not try to use so many bad words, because I actually got sent an email the other day and said, your mother, well, she'd wash your mouth out with soap. And so this is a good time to bring in my good friend and colleague, Dan Wilson, and add him to the stage. So, Dan, great to see you. How are you this evening, sir?
Brother, I am doing well. It is obviously cold.
It is,
extraordinarily cold, but I am warm. I am upstairs in our studio, and I am ready to talk to you about all things liberty related.
And do I have a, see, there I go again. I almost said we have a fuck ton of things to discuss.
Yes,
but I didn't say that. I didn't say that because I'm trying to curb my language here, as everyone knows. So, okay, Dan Wilson, you ran for sheriff of Kootenai County last year and you were defeated by the incumbent, who's Bob Norris. So there are some numbers that I want to regale everybody with. And the reason that I'm going to go back and have you discuss a little bit about who you are is that my audience, even since then, has increased quite a bit. My numbers are going up, and I think that's great. Thanks to everybody who's watching and listening right now live. And I get a ton of people who watch later in podcasts because this is a little late for them. Lost Wanderer is in chat, and good evening, he says. And this is a new one, Retro Crush Media, who says, looking good, Sheriff, looking good in the neighborhood. So maybe you know who that is, but I know you have at least one fan right here. You know, Sheriff Norris,
I get to share a bed with her.
Okay, well, perfect. All right, this means it's time for this. Anyway, Sheriff Norris received November 5th, 61,853 votes, giving him a 40% margin over yourself. You were an independent, and you received 19,609 votes. Mm-hmm. So basically, in my mind, 20,000 votes for an independent who operated literally on a shoestring budget and then was pushed away by essentially the local Republican Party itself is a pretty damn good first-time showing. Now, we discovered that in Kootenai County last time, 97,711 ballots were cast. And that was an 86.8% voter turnout with 19,609 votes. That's still what I consider to be really good first-time numbers. Prop 1 went down. That was about open primaries. That was a good thing. That didn't even get as many. Kamala Harris didn't even get as many yes votes in Kootenai County behind that. That means that basically the people in the county are really strongly opposed to open primaries, and which is ranked choice voting back then. And 64.9% supported that. And part of the point I'm trying to make tonight, besides having Dan here, is that everybody's, oh, Idaho is so red. Okay, with an 86.8% turnout, which is fairly good in this county, 64.9%, 65% said no to open primaries. Okay, 65% of the people opposing open primaries, to me, that's very concerning. So you ran for sheriff. You had about 75 cents for a budget. You went out on social media like a maniac. You were everywhere. You held essentially what were town hall meetings anywhere and everywhere. If anybody had a room and some chairs, you went there. So I remember people thinking, okay, well, is he going to be back? And the obvious question first is, are you going to be back?
Yes, I have already filed for the 2028 election. So yes, I am officially back in the race.
Which, okay, now you and I had a tete-a-tete in a very secret underground bunker.
We did indeed.
Somewhere in North Idaho. And while we were there, certain personnel lit up a cigar, and we had about an hour and a half, about almost 2 hours discussion about what was going on.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about just a long list of things. And one of the things that I said was, for a guy as young as you are, and for a guy that just apparently to lots of people came out of nowhere and then held what I consider to be a pretty good campaign. And, 20,000 votes for a first-time guy over an incumbent who had muchos buccarinos with him and came with a lot of extra additional personnel, not baggage, but money and support from Southern California, having worked for, by the way, California always spelled with a K, having worked for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department before. That was kind of daunting, and you took that task on. So we know what happened to the election. One of the first questions that a lot of people are saying is, are you coming back? And the other corollary question would be, okay, why? Why are you coming back? Why are you going to return?
Unfinished business. You know, when I entered the race back in the winter of 2023, we had just started on the heels of a previous election. And so we were going into it right around Christmas. The primaries were in April, but really, I did not realize what I was getting into at the time. I thought that I was going to be talking about my ideas and policies. And what I found out pretty quickly was that I was actually at war with the establishment Republicans who call themselves MAGA conservative, Republicans right here in Kootenai County, and it's anything but. They have a little bit of conservatism to them, but they are tribal. And so as the 11 months rolled out, and I campaigned a solid 11 months, 7 days a week, all over this entire 1,500 square mile county, I discovered a lot of other things that were going on. And as you know, when you are running for public office, people will come out of the woodwork to start sharing their stories. And some of them are, complete subjective. Some of them had a lot of meat. And so I began, because Donna and I, my wife, we had to become our own media, research media. Yep. We couldn't get any of the local media, the legacy media, whether it's the Coeur d'Alene Press or even into Spokane, any of those news outlets, Spokesman Review, KXLY, KHQ, CREM, etc., as well as the established alternative social media presence that are in the Bob Norris camp. So, I'm doing all of this research while I'm running the campaign, and there was just not enough time, unfortunately, to get all of the improper things, the immoral things, the semi-illegal things, and some that possibly could be illegal. We couldn't get that out in front of the public fast enough. And so, I parted ways with the Republican Party back in March of last year when I found out the fix was already in to endorse or suggest or recommend whatever the local central committee calls that mailer that they send out, to the tune of about $80,000 all over the county. And as you said earlier, this county is pretty red. Too many people get that mailer, and without looking at anything else, they just mark down whatever that mailer tells them. So yeah, we have a lot of unfinished business. Bob Norris, in my belief, along with his cohort, DC Bruce Matari, county commissioner, there's a lot that they need to be answering to, and they have to be exposed, and I'm not going to let it go.
Would it shock you? I think you're sitting down. I'm not sure. You may be standing up. No, but would it shock you if I said something similar to, I'd like to talk about that after we go through a few things? Yeah. Let me ask you this also. What do you think was effective last time?
Well, I think the meet and greets, being out in the public eye, no matter whether it was local fairs and town halls, whether it was recovery groups or fentanyl survivor groups, homeschool groups, whatever it was, being out there and meeting the people, to me, was the most effective, along with the social media, campaign that we ran. But I often heard people, after they met me and heard my heart and what I believe in, come away a believer in the message, not necessarily just the man, but the man that was carrying the message, which is for all people, everybody's rights to life, liberty, and property, as the founders intended it. And we have lost sight of that as we have become enamored with federal government, state government, and we tend to think that local county government is in the minor leagues. And I would contend that we are actually the major leagues.
Oh, am I going to go there tonight, as a matter of fact? Let me ask you this, Dan Wilson. Is there anything that you would do differently next time around?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. I'm not ready to expose those right now, but our team has definitely, yeah.
What you can share.
Yeah, I would say that I'm going to have to start earlier, which I've done now to get ahead of the curve of the Republican Central Committee, their recommendation. I need to build a tighter alliance than what I was able to, just because I was brand new to it. And as you said earlier, I came out of nowhere. Nobody supported me. I funded the beginning of my campaign with $20,000 of my own money. And then I thought if people believe in me, that they would in turn start to invest. But, a lot of that stuff, when you are somebody that came out of the shadows, because in my case, I saw a deficiency in the current sheriff, and that sheriff had to be challenged, and nobody else was standing up to do that. Well, I did come out of the shadows, and so I was running for office 101, learning it as I went.
So let me point this out, if I could. I'd like to add this to the screen. This is where Dan Wilson can be found on X, Twitter, at the Idaho Sheriff. And look, there he is, right there in a circle. And this is where, now, would you say that this is your most active website if people want to take a look at you?
Well, so X, I don't have as many followers. That one's been a little harder for me to break through, but I do post constantly now on X as a means of getting out my message and engaging in the public. As far as social media goes, we're very active also on Instagram, all at the Idaho Sheriff, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. So all of those platforms, but our website is libertywithoutcompromise.com. And that is an offshoot of theidahosheriff.com. What we're doing is, as I am running, I'm also separating the, podcast aspect where we're talking about all things liberty without compromise from the campaign, just to make certain that we're abiding by sunshine laws of the Secretary of State requirements. So you can reach us at either or, but I'm primarily posting right now on libertywithoutcompromise.com.
Okay. Anyway, let's go here. Things are changing. November 5th was absolutely delicious in its what I consider to be buttery political goodness from what happened. This is what happened to the leftists all over the place, the Democrats and the leftists and the globalists. It blew their heads apart. Doge, Trump nominations. I mean, we have people confirmed now. Pete Hegseth as SecDef, which I think is a wonderful appointment. Tulsi Gabbard as DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. So say what you think about Tulsi Gabbard, but there is some linkage here. Kash Patel is coming as FBI director. So I think if so far Trump was able to get through the Senate, a lot of these people, I think Kash Patel is going to get through too. I think the big ones are going to get pushed through. John Ratcliffe as CIA director. RFK Jr. just got pushed through today. RFK Jr. is a weird dude. He's kind of a one-trick pony. But like I said, if there's anything that's needed for this administration is a disruptor. And in the health categories, RFK is not a big Second Amendment guy. Let's be honest. But we didn't nominate him, or Trump didn't nominate him for really having much to do with the Second Amendment. So I really have no heartache with that. And one of the things that RFK Jr. said was that, this crap came out of the Wuhan labs in China, and a lot of other people say, oh, no, that's not true. Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary, and Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel had their own personal oxes gored when they were screwed over by the federal government. And I think their emplacement in positions of big power, because people unfamiliar with the federal power structure, the DNI Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is over all the other 17 intelligence agencies in the federal government, which is way damn cool as far as I'm concerned. So they found themselves the focus of onerous and oppressive moves by the Biden federal government. Because the deal is, and with Doge especially, like Chief Dan George said, my heart soars like an eagle. People forget, and people don't like it when you move their cheese, but all of them forget it's not their cheese. It's ours. All the hard-earned money from the American taxpayer. You, me, us, all of us. And the fact that the American taxpayer funds the entire planet. And so people are literally losing their shit over the fact that, oh, you're looking, and we have not yet even begun to reveal all the corruption that is yet to be unearthed. So let's go back to law enforcement in various sheriffs. Because pushback, especially during COVID, Wuhan 18, illegals, etc., came from classic sheriffs like Lamb and Villanueva and Arpaio and Judd and a guy named Chad Bianco. And the interesting thing is, let me see if I have this up here. Oh, here we go. Oh, I don't have it up here. I thought I did, but I don't. Chad Bianco, which I find very interesting, is going to be running against Kamala Harris for governor of the state of California. Because I think Gavin Newsom has his eyes on the Oval Office in 2028. And how wonderful it would be if a constitutional sheriff actually won the governorship, the gubernatorial race in California. I can't think of anything more juicy than that. The great thing about him and all the other sheriffs is that they were not in keeping with the plans of all the other board of directors and leftists and councils and whatnot. And basically they took their own oaths very seriously. Bianco refused to enforce mask laws. He was against Prop 47, which reduced the criminal penalties and took some felonies, many felonies, to a misdemeanor, including rape. People go, oh, no, that can't be true. Oh, go look at Proposition 47 and 57 in the state of California, and you'll begin to understand. So let's go back to constitutional sheriff. Dan Wilson, you ran as a constitutional sheriff. So what does that mean to you?
Constitutional sheriff is merely a sheriff who understands the history of our country, how government first began, all the way with the Pilgrims and the Mayflower Compact through the Revolutionary War, the framing of the Constitution, the argument by John Jay, Hamilton, and Madison regarding why they believe that the states should ratify this Constitution versus the Anti-Federalists. And then, of course, when you understand all of that and the Bill of Rights, and you've studied that your entire life, you understand what it means to stand up, to be an interposition between an out-of-control, unaccountable government and the people. You have a duty when you step into the role as sheriff, which is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, as was reinforced by the Supreme Court in Prince versus U.S., and many of you know it more as Mac versus U.S., but a sheriff that's truly constitutional isn't somebody that just says, well, I'm pro Second Amendment and won't make you wear a mask and I won't enforce red flag laws. He actually understands what true liberty means, as was expressed by those great framers, those that we call our founders.
Well, over here in this article, yes, it's not just those things. This was a great summary, I thought, of a constitutional sheriff as somebody who's not going to obey any laws, rules, or regulations or edicts that are in violation of either the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or the state's Constitution. A sheriff that does not respect his residents' constitutional rights will obey all statutes, rules, regulations, and edicts signed by politicians and bureaucrats, but he or she won't do any research to determine if his or her actions are actually constitutional instead of just taking marching orders.
Right. Yeah.
I want to go here also. If, folks, you're interested, you can go to the CSPOA, which is the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and they give you a whole bunch more information there as well. Other people who talk about that, because a lot of this stuff is local, folks. Hey, Idaho's a red state. They don't have any problems. No, of course they don't have any problems. Here's an article from the Idaho Dispatch. Former Arizona Sheriff Mack and CSPOA, what we were just discussing, respond to claims ahead of a Coeur d'Alene event. Now, this is how leftists quantify and see constitutional sheriffs. The Institute for Research and Education on Human Rights is warning Idahoans about a horrible event taking place. This was back in 2024. In Coeur d'Alene at Altar Church, former Sheriff Richard Mack of Arizona, the presenter, spoke to the Idaho Dispatch today, responding to the claims and accusations. They had accusations.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like the Brady Law. He wanted to enforce actual constitutional laws. He figured it was his constitutional duty to determine what was and what featured under the Constitution that he would abide by. And as far as people like this, again, in Idaho, you, me, we get to make that determination as to what's right, what's wrong. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, that event that you're speaking of that took place in Coeur d'Alene was the event where Sheriff Richard Mack chose to endorse me over incumbent Bob Norris. And he specifically stated that Bob Norris was not a constitutional sheriff and that a lot of his policies were troubling. And these hit pieces that come over and over again is by these globalist Marxists who have never apparently read any of the founders to understand that, I think it was Hamilton and Federalist 85 said we can rest securely in the disposition of the state legislators to erect a barrier against the national government, meaning that it was always the intent of the framers to have parallel, co-equal, not run by either or, but accountable to each other, autonomous, so to speak. And that's how you keep everybody in check. The federal government couldn't become too powerful. And at the state level, you couldn't also become tyrannical like was taking place after the Revolutionary War during the Articles of Confederation. And so, I think that it greatly troubles those who are progressive, who want a living, breathing document rather than the Constitution, which transcends time and places. So we're a huge enemy to those, and we're an enemy because we say that we will physically put ourselves in the line of fire when we know that somebody, our citizens that we are protecting, their rights are being violated by a federal mandate, a federal law, federal enforcement, or also the state or even local. And so it's not that a sheriff just willy-nilly decides, well, this is lawful or this isn't. I would argue and say that the sheriff is dealing with things that eventually go to the Supreme Court. They're not trivial things. And you and I both know, you were on the streets. As law enforcement, we many times choose to enforce or not enforce certain statutes. So, but a sheriff, has to take that extra time to really put thought into why he's going to step into the role of protecting his people.
That has to do with discernment, with discretion. Yes. And as the years go on and the months go on, more discretion is, in my opinion, intentionally removed from law enforcement officers. I'm BZ, that's Dan Wilson. We'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights. at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night Conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Hey fellas, are you mission ready? Coming in November to SHR Media. By way of Big E Jackson, you need to check out Mission Ready Men. It's a show that equips you to navigate our society's challenges from a biblical perspective with courage and conviction. Tune into Mission Ready Men as we examine our culture through the prism of biblical truths, teachings, and how to apply them in our daily lives. Prepare to step up, stand out, and step into your role as a man, as ordained by God. That's Mission Ready Men, hosted by Earl Jackson, coming this November on the SHR Media Network. And get mission ready.
Want to make an immediate difference in the life of a critically ill child? You have the ability to do that right now. Make a donation to Dream Makers for Life, the organization that restores dreams to seriously ill children and their families. You can sponsor a dream pack for a child, which contains a clear PVC backpack, a dry erase board adventure coloring book, a journal, and dry erase markers to inspire a critically ill child to envision a future adventure and hope. Want to become a dream maker for life yourself? Go to dreamforlife.org. That's dreamforlife.org. Help a child. Help a family. There is always hope.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am BZ. We are back. The first half hour is in the can. It's 39 minutes after, well, it's 8:39 Pacific. It's 10:39 Central, 11:39 way over there on the East Coast. You guys are so far away. And again, you can jump into our chat room. I should be telling you about all of these things. But I want to tell you this. You can subscribe if you wish, I would ask, to the SHR group Rumble channel. Just subscribe, give us a little bit of a thumbs up. How did that thumb get so curved? That's weird. Put that down. People want to see that. Anyway, on the SHR Media YouTube channel, you can subscribe right there. And if you guys subscribe, we're looking to break 500 subscribers right now on YouTube. And if we break 500 subscribers, I get either the air filter from a 1959 Peterbilt or a porcelain Dalmatian or more vodka, which is what I would prefer. So thanks to everybody here. Dan Wilson is here in the saloon tonight, and welcome back to Dan. It's great to see you. We were talking about, well, the show tonight is basically about law enforcement, local law enforcement, politics. We're winning, but it's still a struggle, and it's still a fight. I wanted to go and talk about the SPLC, which is the Southern Poverty Law Center, and what they happen to say about constitutional sheriffs. So that is the revered leftist, racist website, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has zero to do with poverty and or law, which is pretty much an arterial clot of haters of America that quantifies constitutional sheriffs as the real locus of evil in the entire United States of America. I mentioned this before, but I say this so that you guys understand where leftists are coming from. And if you think a red state or Idaho, oh, we're fine, nothing is happening here, look the other way, don't look here because there is no leftist push going on. Bullshit. This is a quote from the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. During 2023, constitutional sheriffs have shown what they consider to be their abject disrespect for the rule of law. Dozens of constitutional sheriffs across the country took a stand against gun laws, which are essentially unconstitutional, publicly refusing to enforce current rules or future laws that would change the status quo around gun ownership. Oh, guns bad. Funny things sticking out of guns, black guns. Has a thing here. Belly scally. And those sheriffs allow people to circumvent the structure of checks and balances put in place by the Constitution, usurp the job of the Supreme Court by making their own determination as to whether a law is constitutional. These actions are contrary to their job as law enforcement officials since they refuse to enforce the law. Their very argument is in itself fundamentally flawed and specious. I'm sorry, this is where BZ goes off on a little rant. Interpreting what is and isn't lawful, like I discussed any number of times, at least the 4 times that I spoke to Dan Wilson right here, that lies with the sheriff of a given county and the deputies answering various calls for service. And it truly also lands in the lap of chiefs of police who essentially, in terms of this, are abject cowards themselves, because the deputies and the officers have the ability to enforce the appropriate constitutional laws. What I say quite simply is, if you're not doing that, you are dishonoring your oath of office and the badge that you wear. Calm down, BZ, 210 over 190, not good right now. I was in law enforcement for 41, almost 42 years. In 37 plus years, I happened to work for 2 different sheriff's departments. If I were ordered by anyone for any reason to do anything that was unconstitutional, a violation of my oath, I would have refused. That would be my obligation. That's just not a hint or a suggestion. Take a peek at the hat. What this says is, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm a sheepdog. I took that oath. That oath lives wild within me now, these days. It isn't a hint. That was my oath, which I held my hand up and I swore to, as I'm sure you believe too, Dan Wilson. That buck stops with us, you and me, sir.
Yeah. I think it's funny that in all other forms of government, whether you're looking at the executive all the way down to governors to the Congress, you have decisions that are made continually that are done by these elected representatives that are challenged and go to the court. And then the Supreme Court comes typically, when it gets to that level, to say this is or is not constitutional. Yet there seems to be such a fear of a local sheriff who makes that same judgment call that our elected representatives do on a continual basis. And the executive, when we say, hey, my understanding of the Constitution, my training and experience, as well as the fact that I am the chief law enforcement officer of the county, affords me to say that if I'm going to stand in the way of somebody's rights being violated, I'm doing that to be just. And then later on, you can allow the court process, the rule of law, to unfold. But I find it funny when you have the SPLC and other groups around the country that get so spun up about a sheriff actually making a judgment call and carrying it through. They act like somehow a sheriff is going to enslave everybody in a county and start a war. And it's just the constant lies we've been hearing over and over and over again.
It couldn't be further from the truth, but it makes what I call the DLG Democrats, leftists, and globalists, makes them do this every time. Well, there's a new sheriff in town in the Oval Office.
Yes.
And all the winning that has occurred as a result of that has everybody absolutely nuts. It's all about the kind of people. And here's where I attempt to make the relationship between, yes, I'm talking about Dan Wilson. He was running for sheriff. He's going to be running for sheriff again in 2028. I grok that concept. I usually do national stuff, but this is also about not just me, not just Dan, not just our county, not just our state, but it's about everybody else in your state. Are you paying attention with whom your sheriff is? Did you elect him or her? What kind of a person are they? Are you looking to see that your rights are being held, that they're not being violated? The kind of people that you elect as sheriff, you want to make sure that your rights, your freedoms, your liberties are taken into consideration, like Dan said, when the big decisions are being made. So, Dan Wilson. I've had a whole bunch more people come into the show, and I've increased my listenership since we last spoke, who may not know anything about you. Can you give sort of a brief background about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a fourth generation Spokane kid. Grew up in the Spokane Valley, which is in Washington State, mere 20 miles to the west of where I currently am. I now reside in Washington, or in Idaho, northern Idaho. I was a homeschool kid in the 80s, from 84, second grade, all the way through 93 when I graduated. Went on to become a journeyman carpenter, and later on in life, after I had started a couple commercial construction companies, I decided that I wanted to go back and pursue a love, which is law enforcement. I've always been a guy that loves taking care of people and justice and truth. And so I was accepted into a Spokane Police Academy and graduated from there, swore my oath, and became a commissioned reserve police officer in the state of Washington. I served with the Spokane Police Department for 4 years, and then another 8 years out in the city of Liberty Lake, which borders Kootenai County, Idaho. So I won't ever say that I was the most high-speed law enforcement officer out there, but when I put on the uniform and the badge and the gun and the Kevlar vest and got into my patrol car, nobody on the street had any idea that I was a reserve officer and that I did this part-time. But in 2022, living over in Idaho, I saw the current sheriff, who came from Los Angeles, California, where he was a Los Angeles County deputy for 30 years, and came up to Kootenai County and decided that he wanted to be sheriff up here. I started observing him and realized that he was a very, very weak man who was not a strong leader, did not have any plan or policies for getting the county secure after all of the events that we saw in 2020, the attempted end run around the Bill of Rights. And I thought, surely, once Biden was sworn into office illegitimately, and we saw the southern border wide open. I mean, Donna, my wife, and I went down to the Arizona border, the unsecure Arizona border, just last January, and saw firsthand hundreds of military-aged males coming across the border, men that were from the Middle East and from Africa. And I knew that our sheriff just was not doing anything, whether it was forming a citizens posse to help secure our own county in the event like the Hawaii fires or what happened in North Carolina with the hurricanes. The county is the best suited to triage itself. So, yeah, a whole host of other things that I differed with his inability to combat human trafficking and the illegal invasion. So, yeah, that's why I decided to get out of my comfortable life, owning 2 commercial construction companies that are very successful, and put my hat in the ring and said, if nobody else will stand, I will. And I gave it my best for 11 months.
That's why I had Dan Wilson back in the saloon tonight. I wanted to hear his story. I want to go now, move over into kind of some local law enforcement, and then I want to move on to some federal law enforcement, because I may have a few things to say about federal law enforcement. Let me put this up here, because when I say intimate, hint, suggest, intuit, intimate that, you know, the American media maggots are in league with all of this stuff. Here's a story that came out from SF Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle. And as you folks may or may not know, London Breed was kicked out, a massive leftist in San Francisco, kicked out, and another mayor installed who decided to release a little bit of the strings, to let the San Francisco PD cops breathe a little bit in terms of pursuits. Well, because humans are human, and in law enforcement, crazy things happen. Well, the American media maggots say, well, San Francisco changed its chase policy. Did it lead to the crash that injured 7 people? So again, this is a push by the American media maggots to ensure that you're recognizing that, oh, you know what? If you let cops have their leash just a little bit, bad things are going to happen. Then here's something from the Mariposa County Sheriff's Department. This is in California. Always spell it with a K. And this is Sheriff Jeremy Brees on California Senate Bill 54. So he says, amongst a bunch of other things, that he has a duty to enforce the law via the oath that he took. State legislation, specifically California Senate Bill 54, SB 54, undermines he has taken ownership. This is my commitment to the community as it limits cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities. SB 54, known as the euphemism California Values Act, restricts local law enforcement from sharing information with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents, preventing federal agents from entering local jails, and severely impeding my ability to protect his people who elected him. These are just a few items that are going on, but wait, it's more. Oh, go back a little bit. Where is my department came into this? Oh, here we go. Okay, I'd also like to show this. Migrant encounters on the southwest border dropped 96% from last year. I wonder why that would be. That wouldn't be because Joe Vegetable is gone, would it? And people are actually beginning to enforce the law. And the law is Texas DPS, for example. Texas DPS facts indicated apprehensions from the previous 7 days in the 5 Texas-based border sectors fell by 89% from last year. That's amazing. But we all knew instantly that if you just enforce the laws that are on the books, you won't have a problem. Another thing that I think is beautiful, because there is in fact a new sheriff in town. Iowa Attorney General launches investigation after sheriff refuses to work with ICE. Well, now that's not going to happen in the state of California. Always spell it with a K. They love SB 54. But when you're talking about another state, well, the things are changing there on that venue as well. And let me illustrate one final thing, if I may, Dan Wilson, this is from my former department. And this is a direct result of what California, always spelled over the K, wants for its citizens. Sacramento County deputies no longer responding to mental health emergencies without a concomitant crime component of it. Now, our sheriff, their sheriff, not my sheriff, but I used to work for that. I retired in 2016 from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. Jim Cooper has said that following, this is intentional, a 2024 ruling by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the court found a Las Vegas police officer liable for the death of a man in mental distress after force was used while the man was not the suspect of a crime. All of these things have consequences. As Obama said, elections have consequences. Stupid decisions have consequences. So our sheriff, Jim Cooper, has said, you're going to suffer the consequences as well, because I'm not going to throw my people out to the wolves. Now, on one end, you're saying, this is horrible. How can you not do it? On the other end, the people that are working for him are saying, you know, officer survival is tough. Now I have to encounter career survival. And all it takes is one bad call between myself and an IA beef and or a suspension and or removal or resignation or being fired and or criminally prosecuted. Being mentally ill is not a crime, and we can't be the answer. Sheriff Cooper said in a news conference, law enforcement officers are not trained mental health professionals. We're not psychiatrists and psychologists. We don't deal with it. We've had minimal training in de-escalation. But the change is causing other concerns as well. The Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District said, any call that has a potential for one of our folks to be hurt, we call for law enforcement. We have to have a safe scene before we can enter. Well, it's impacting everybody. It's impacting people whose lives were not they were not intended to be impacted. Decisions have consequences. Everything has consequences, all up and down the various food chains. So now people are going to be put in jeopardy. So we're just going to be waiting. Here's what BZ thinks is going to happen. Just let one paramedic or one fire department personnel get injured because of this, there may be a suit. And then the other thing is, what about all these psychiatrists that are saying that we want people that are psychiatrically trained to go out and respond to these things? Let one of those people get shot or killed, stabbed, cut, etc., and we'll see what happens. You know, are we going to go full circle on this? And then you're going to see psychiatric people say, oh, we need pepper spray. Oh, as a matter of fact, we need guns. And then you find out all about the cycle of life. This is all cyclical. I've seen all of this before in law enforcement. And Dan Wilson, I bet you have too.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, there is very few jobs where the employee, in this case, law enforcement, is expected to be an expert on every profession, if you think about it. And when it comes down to being a mental health expert or a medical expert, that is something that we are not. We were trained to triage and to do things that required immediate attention until those that do have the big fancy degrees that work in the big buildings, those people that get paid a lot more to figure it out, but we're there to triage. And that line is extremely blurred at times. And I remember when there was that outbreak, it seemed everybody was getting excited delirium, superhuman strength. Were impervious to pain. And, you know, you'd take a guy, and I tangled with a dude that was hopped up on meth one night in a foot pursuit, and we ended up getting into a fight. I outweighed him by 30, 40 pounds, but I could not even keep him down myself. But how many of those other scenarios do you get 5 or 6 officers? We've all been on those calls where everybody's trying to grab a limb and try to help subdue the individual so we can safely take them into custody to get treated, and things go bad. When bad guys, whether it's intentional or not, if you are committing an act where you are using force against the general public and the public has to be protected from that, as you said, there are consequences. So, yeah, I think that we ask way too much out of law enforcement. Society has in essence said, you know what, we're good with letting law enforcement deal with all the shit that none of us want to deal with. But as you said earlier, departments are getting wise. If we're going to, as a department, get roasted and everybody's ire comes out against us because we made the difficult call that nobody else wanted to be a part of, nor would they come and participate in these big scary events, then I understand why a sheriff would make that decision.
Very sensical. Folks, I am BZ. That is Dan Wilson. We will be right back after this break. Hey, if you need to use the electric winkle chamber, maybe this is a good time. Also, get a drink. Hey, look, would it be possible that there's something of an adult beverage within this funny little thing that says BZ's KC 135 Kettle 1 refueling cream? I don't know. I hear rumors of that kind of stuff.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Join me right here on the SHR Media Network every Monday and Friday, 12 on the Pacific, 3 on the East Coast. On this show, we'll discuss news, politics, the government, how cranky we are about the government, and more. If you want to hear hard talk, good interviews, sarcasm, bad jokes, and oh God, that really is me in a nutshell. Either way, check me out right here on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Friday, 12 Pacific, 3 on the East, on the SHR Media Network.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional, but it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com. 7armors.com. Faithful, vigilant, steadfast, passion.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. It's the second hour, number two. So welcome back to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. I am, in fact, the aforementioned really fat old guy and hairy BZ. Thanks for watching live on all the places in which you are watching live. Thanks for listening. I'm acknowledging that you frequently watch me later in podcast, and thanks for being in the chat room. If you subscribe to the SHR Media channel on the SHR Media YouTube and also on the SHR Media Rumble channel, each subscription gets me a choice of any of these things. Let's see. An arboreal animal of my choice. I get a porcelain Dalmatian, not so popular these days, really hard to find. More cat food, my choice of the cat food. A timing chain from a 1979 Peterbilt 359. I think they're a little hard to find these days too. Blinker fluid. It's winter, folks. Have you checked your blinker fluid? And of course, more vodka. And I am the conservative Sherpa, and there is tons more buttery conservative political goodness to come. This is the dude of the hour. This is Dan Wilson. He is right here, and I thank him ever so kindly for being in the saloon tonight. What I'd like to do is kind of transfer over. We talked a little bit about local law enforcement, and I'd like to move over into the federal venue of law enforcement. I have things to say about that. I bet Dan Wilson has some things to say about that. But the temper of the times, folks, they have changed.
We're here today because we have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. This is a new DOJ, and we are taking steps to protect Americans, American citizens, and angel moms, like the mom standing right behind me, who you're going to hear from in a moment.
Baby.
New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
Perfect. I'm loving the hell out of that. Any initial thoughts? Because we're going to keep going on this kind of stuff. Dan Wilson, any thoughts about that at this point right now?
Well, I'm loving it. As I said, on the 11 months I was on the campaign trail, the only way to beat the global Marxist is to play the rules that they've decided that we're going to play by. At one time, we all played by the same rules, the rule of law, the Constitution. However, it's like Monopoly. If you are playing Monopoly with somebody who is making up the rules, who's going to win that game most often? And until the global Marxists that are amongst us decide that they want to play by the rule of law again, then what we have to do is we have to engage them with every bit of the same velocity of lawfare and rooting out, going after them politically as we have to until they decide that they want to play again by the rules. So I applaud this, and I'm looking very forward to seeing how it all unfolds. I hope people are charged. I hope people go to jail. I hope they're tried, and I hope they go to jail.
This is wonderful. I love John Kennedy, not the president who has passed away. John Kennedy himself. November 22nd, 1963. I was around in that. I got sent home when he was assassinated. I remember John Kennedy. He wouldn't even be a good Democrat today. He might not even be allowed in the Republican Party.
Mr. Chairman.
Agreed.
Mr. Patel, did you listen to what my colleague, Senator Welsh, had to say about politicizing the FBI and the Department of Justice?
Kash Patel is not real happy with the FBI, which is why I think his insertion, his confirmation as FBI director, the entire 7th floor of the FBI right now, if they aren't quaking, they're stupid.
I did, sir.
I did too. I always listen when Senator Welch speaks. And he's right. But here's where we find ourselves today, and you can put an end to this.
He will.
For better or worse, either in reality or perception, in modern times, the FBI has been politicized. Or at least there's an appearance. It started with Mr. James Comey. He publicly investigated.
Oh, the things I could tell you about James Comey. By the way, if you don't know, off to the right, John Thune.
The political nominee of both major parties. Guinness Book of World Records. He publicly investigated both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Held a press conference. Hurt that agency more than I will ever know. I wouldn't put Mr. Comey in charge of a ham sandwich. And so did Peter Strzok. And so did Lisa Page.
All three of which were more arrogant than I've seen in a law enforcement individual in quite some time.
And so did Michael Sussman. And the person who gave him, a Hillary Clinton lawyer, a pass to roam around the Department of Justice and the FBI at will. And so did the prosecutors who tried to slip by a 2 misdemeanor plea deal for the president's son. And it hurts me to say this, but so did Attorney General Garland. For the first time in the history of ever, the Attorney General Garland chose to prosecute a former president of the United States. And this part is really special. He did it after the former president of the United States announced that he would be a candidate against his, Attorney General Garland's, boss. Forget the merits. We can argue those all day long. You understand the perception? It's got to end now. The seal has been broken. We've got to stop it now. Don't go over there and burn down that agency. You go over there and lift it up. Clean it out, but lift it up in accordance with due process and the rule of law. Because Senator Welch is right. This has got to end now.
I don't call it retribution and I don't call it revenge. All I do is I call it justice. When you have Comey, who leaked classified documents to the New York Times and nothing happens to him, when everything would have happened to any other director at that point, when he makes a summary in terms of Hillary Clinton and says that he determines by himself, he's not even going to give the opportunity to then AG Loretta Lynch to make a decision in terms of whether or not she will prosecute. He concludes, after giving bullet point after bullet point after bullet point of the ways and means in which Hillary Clinton should be prosecuted, but then decides that she didn't have intent. After I've said any number of times, there are crimes of general intent and specific intent, and none of those crimes were crimes of specific intent. But he made it, and he made that determination upon himself that he was not going to prosecute. That's not his job. Your job is to line them up. Here's another article. Trump admin tells senior FBI ranks to resign or be fired. As far as when I first published this, I indicated this is a happy story. Kash Patel, the choice for FBI director, claims he was unaware of the decision prior to the ultimatum. That's wonderful. These people have to be removed. They have to be excised like the bad leeches that they are. This had me so, let's just say, angry. This is DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who was confirmed and needed to be. The FBI is so corrupt. We will work with any and every agency to stop leaks and prosecute these crooked deep state agents to the fullest extent of the law. If she believes that the FBI may be possibly involved in this, this becomes an if-then equation. If the FBI is involved, then they needed to be prosecuted. Which is why I've said for so long, the FBI has become the weaponized arm of the DNC and leftists. It is a corrupt anti-American terrorist organization. Leaked document says large-scale immigration enforcement action coming soon to the LA Times. Somebody somewhere thinks that the FBI leaked. Any thoughts up to this point, Dan Wilson?
I understand what Senator Kennedy was saying about lifting the FBI and not burning it down. However, I would respectfully disagree. I do not believe that you can redeem the FBI. In fact, I think the FBI needs to be disbanded and smashed into 8 million pieces because they cannot be trusted. They have ruined their reputation. We have zero trust, the American people. They have betrayed us. When you look at everything that they have done, and we are finding more and more of the illegitimate, unlawful acts that they've been involved with, we saw the weaponization, as has been stated, the 4 years of the Biden administration going after parents that were protesting their children's school and bathroom issues. abortion clinics. We had how many agents pulled off of their primary mission to go after J6 defendants. I do not believe that I'll be glad to see Patel get in there and start cleaning people out and holding people accountable. But I say I have zero use for the FBI, and I hope it dies a absolute painstaking death.
Well, that was pretty succinct, and I would expect no less. Here's an article that I wrote a long time ago. Let me see, because I'm going to make a point with this. 2017. Anybody remember when anarchists were rioting in Berkeley, and essentially Berkeley PD was told to stand down? Now, there were people, and this is so strange. I can't imagine why this would be, but if you look here, the videos that I had in here of a Berkeley PD officer with his window open saying something similar to when confronted by a journalist who said, look, about a block away, there's a huge old riot over there. Why aren't you guys over there stopping that riot? It's a riot. And the guy replied, which is where the title of this post went. Okay, and?
Yeah.
AYFKM. Are you fucking kidding me? All that would have taken was one brave sergeant who said something similar to, watching that for a fraction of a second, you and you and you and you and you, hat up, gear up, gown up, get your batons, you're getting your asses over there. And you need to do it right now. And that's why, particularly in California, always spell it with a K, this stuff continues to occur. And people say, oh, well, BZ, you shouldn't be so harsh and judgmental with regard to the FBI. And that's why I say the DOJ and the FBI, I'll throw in the DOJ, at least at that time, are the weaponized arms of the DNC and leftists. They're a corrupt anti-American terrorist organization. What's the definition of fucking terror? Yeah. Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. And that is what has happened to the FBI. How terribly, remarkably sad that is. But I want to make this comparison, and I'd like you to weigh in also, Dan Wilson. The comparison is, people are saying, oh, it's just the people on the 7th floor. It's the chiefs, not the Indians. Bull fucking shit. All the Indians know who leaked. All the Indians know who the underminers and subverters are in all 56 of the field offices. They know who supports what politician and how. And they take big cups and mugs of shut the fuck up every day, because if they say something, they'll be whistleblowers. And the FBI does not deal well with whistleblowers. That's a great way to get your ass cut off and make sure not only do you not go anywhere, but you may be prosecuted. At minimum, you'll be told to leave or resign, or there'll be an OPR investigation, Office of Professional Responsibility. I forgot my FBI background. There'll be an OPR investigation to you, against you. Any thoughts on that at this point? Because I've got a great article coming up after this.
I agree. I think Kyle Seraphim and Steve Friend, former FBI agents, understand that very well when it comes to whistleblowing. And I believe that the FBI, those that are working there still, look, you swore an oath. You swore an oath to the Constitution. And if you are more concerned about your paycheck and where your family's going to live, rather than, and your security, rather than your oath, then you're part of the problem. And I'm not going to be happy. I will not be satisfied until I see James Comey, Strzok, Ray, Elvis Chan, and a whole host of others sitting before a jury and hopefully found to be guilty of the crimes that they committed, not only to their oath and their country, but to the American people.
I don't disagree with that at all. And there have been all sorts of comments going on in the chat room. This is the next story that I want to reveal because I know it to be true. Here's the cool thing about this show. I don't have to make any of this stuff up. I don't have to make it up or emphasize. All I have to do is show what's already out on the internet. Each and every show that I have, the stuff is out there on the internet for people to find, except intentionally people don't want to find it, particularly the American media maggots. They don't want to know what's going on. And then that's, of course, why everyone else is going 310 over 290. Here's another story. Real Clear Investigations. They don't really particularly lean one way or the other. They'll have just as many leftist-oriented stories on Real Clear Politics, for example, as they will others. Weaponized, this is by Ben Weingarten of Real Clear Investigations. Weaponized FBI. It's real. Whistleblowers testify, and they boast the scars to prove it. And so what the Democrats said is, it's a purge. It's an evil purge where 8 senior FBI leaders got their asses kicked out. And it's an act of retribution. No, it's not retribution. It's not revenge. It's justice.
Yes.
But former colleagues of those G-men say this narrative is backwards. FBI officials, past and present, have marshaled significant evidence via whistleblower complaints and testimony indicating that several terminated leaders routinely use their offices for partisan purposes. This is the FBI that needs to be removed, or maybe even Cloward Piven to death.
Yes,
I'm not sure which. Now, if Kash Patel's marching orders are to rip this thing apart, I think he could do it with disruption. And these people are all disruptors, and it's way, 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 way past due. Let's go to this. I don't know if you guys or yourself, Dan Wilson, whether you listen to or watch James O'Keefe's stuff. Here is an affidavit about an FBI raid where essentially everything is
redacted. A federal judge has ordered the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York to release the affidavit, the search warrant materials, and literally everything has been redacted. We go to page 43 of this document that was released. It says probable cause justifying search of the person and subject premises. In order for them to get a warrant to raid a newsroom, you have to go to a magistrate judge and present probable cause. The Southern District U.S. attorneys have literally redacted every single word of the probable cause here. There's just a footnote that says, based upon my training and experience, I have learned, amongst other things, that cell phones are capable of sending emails. That's right. The FBI agents are learning that cell phones can send emails. Everything else has been redacted. The reasons that they came up with and they gave to the judge. Now, we would argue that the public has a right to know what those reasons are. If you're going to take the extraordinary step of using violence against people and going through their notebooks, you need to know the reason. Also in this affidavit is a document that I signed, James O'Keefe, when I was in handcuffs there on a Saturday morning where they took those 2 phones. Oh,
by the way, did you notice you can't know what the name of the special agent is at the bottom? Redacted.
Going to give those phones back to me, as well as a statement.
Would my name have been redacted from any warrant that I signed, or a warrant return, or an affidavit applying? No, of course not.
Unlocking devices with biometric features during the execution of the warrant. Law enforcement personnel are authorized to obtain from James O'Keefe the display of biometric characteristics, fingerprint to unlock the device, to swipe the fingers, or to hold in front of their faces. Like a clockwork orange, they're going to have reporters unlock their phones. This might be common procedure. What's quite uncommon is doing it to people with sources on their Signal device.
Okay, let's stop right there. As a reporter, folks, as a journalist, would you be forced to do this? Well, it depends upon the regime. It depends upon who the individuals are. This is the FBI then. Will it be the FBI now and in the future? But this is just a sampling, just a mere sampling of what's going on in the FBI, what has gone on in the FBI, and it is politically motivated. Dan Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would contend that the FBI is not redeemable. And while they may be able to root some of it out, it's metastatic. It's going to spread eventually, and all we have to do is get another radical president in place, and it'll all go back again. The fact of the matter is that you have a modern-day Cheka called the FBI in the United States. Look at the continual lying to the FISA courts. And by the way, who allows those affidavits to be redacted? Would a judge not be the one that goes in there and allows that redaction to take place? I mean, this is how ridiculous it has become. American government was supposed to be transparent by the people and for the people. And what we see now is overlords telling us that we can't handle to know some or all of the truth. And I say that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we should be very, very sparse on those things that we allow to be redacted. And I think you and I know what where that line is. But we're seeing a government that is not transparent. It is not our government. And I say it's time we take it back.
And it is not answerable. It is not answerable.
Not to anybody.
And you can't get the FBI or any federal or even any local law enforcement can't pull this shit off. Only the federal government can pull that off and simply say, you know what, we're not going to answer because nobody's done anything.
Look at the Steele dossier.
Oh my God.
Who was held accountable for that? Was
Absolutely
James Comey?
No one.
While James Comey and Chris Wray are on their private jets with their smirks running around the country. I mean, look, we have blatant violation of people's rights and laws, and nothing happens. But yet we are continually spoon-fed what they determine we can or can't know, and that is not how the founders set this country up originally with the checks and balances that they put in place.
Well, at this point, essentially, we are answerable to the government. The government is not answerable to us. My plan at this point is to play about a 2.5-minute video. We'll go to the break, then we'll come back, and Dan Wilson is my great guest tonight. And then after the break, we'll talk about, hey, Dan, what's been happening in terms of a lot of the local politics that I don't particularly know that much about.
About what the Obama Justice Department ordered federal lawyers to do and not to do concerning the Hillary Clinton email investigation.
Remember
Chief Intelligence
this?
Correspondent Catherine Herridge tells us in sworn testimony on Capitol Hill, one of the insiders told lawmakers what she was told.
During closed-door testimony last summer, former FBI lawyer Lisa Page said the Obama administration's Justice Department advised the FBI not to pursue the gross negligence statute for Hillary Clinton in the mishandling of classified information.
So they're not independent. If they're not independent under Obama, then what would have happened had Donald Trump, or should Donald Trump in the future, OMB, Orange Man Bad, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, what if he specifically tells the FBI, don't do fill in the blank?
Former U.S. Attorney and House Republican John Ratcliffe led the line of questioning about the statute known as 18 U.S.C. 793. Ratcliffe, you're making it sound like it was the department that told you you're not going to charge gross negligence because we're the prosecutors. Page interrupted. That is correct.
That is correct.
Testimony appears to conflict with then FBI Director James Comey's recommendation in July 2016 against criminal charges for Clinton.
What I can assure the American people is that this investigation was done honestly, competently, and independently. No outside influence of any kind was brought to bear.
You're a liar, period. End of statement. Yeah. You're a liar. James Comey, you're a liar. Christopher Wray, you're a liar.
Who was Lisa Page shacked up with at the time?
Well, that wouldn't be Strzok.
Weird.
But excuse me.
Weird.
Who I call Peter Stroke.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to be right back after that. After this, that was Dan Wilson. And if you need to take a potty break or elsewise, now's the time.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Join me right here on the SHR Media Network every Monday and Friday, 12 on the Pacific, 3 on the East Coast. On this show, we'll discuss news, politics, the government, how cranky we are about the government, and more. If you want to hear hard talk, good interviews, sarcasm, bad jokes, and oh God, that really is me in a nutshell. Either way, check me out right here on the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Friday, 12 Pacific, 3 on the East, on the SHR Media Network.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional, but it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com. 7armors.com. Faithful, vigilant, steadfast, passion.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back. I'm BZ. This is the final half hour of the show. I don't suspect I'm going to be doing any overtime at this point. I may. The phone lines are open if you're interested in calling. 916-835-3329. Look at the bottom. Look at the bottom right here. Look at this. Zoom, 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 zoom. Go the wrong way. Go the right way. There you go. 835-3329, 916-835-3329. That number in Bolivia is 1. However, if you're not in Bolivia, that number is 916-835-3329. I am again speaking tonight with this gentleman, Dan Wilson, who was a candidate for sheriff of Kootenai County, where I live, last year. And he's going to be coming back in 2028 for a sheriff's candidate. Hey, but folks, you know, isn't this grand? If you get fired or released by the FBI, the Palm Springs PD wants to pick you up, because who wouldn't be pissed after having gotten kicked out of the FBI and then put back into patrol as you're not even an agent, you're a lowly street cop who shags calls for service out of a clapped out automobile. Yeah, I'm sure the FBI agents will be lining the hell up for that. Not really. I want to go here also, because now I'd like to have Dan Wilson weigh in on some local issues. I noticed this, and my wife sent this to me, Mrs. BZ, because that's her name, Mrs. BZ, sent this to me and said, hey, look, I wonder if this affected anything around here. Well, the story was from the New York Post. HHS splurged more than $22 billion, not million, billion dollars on grants for migrants, including cash for cars, home loans, and like that. Oh, and startups. So, Dan Wilson, there's a Red Lion Inn that happens to be in Post Falls. And last year, a lot of people noticed, hey, this is kind of weird. At this Red Lion Inn, why are there an assload of old clapped out cars that are in the parking lot of this Red Lion Inn, and they seem to be driven by people that don't live in the state, and who may possibly be illegal invaders. Why the clapped out cars? Why are they all from Wyoming? What's going on? Are we seeing, did Post Falls? My first question was, okay, to your knowledge, Dan Wilson, did Post Falls take grant money in terms of refurbishing the Red Lion Inn, or am I just full of crap? I'm a conspiracy theorist. This is me right now. I'm blowing up. What is going on? Or they were just, that's innocent. They were there for a construction job, a remodel job. Do we know anything about that? It's an honest question that I'm not the only one asking that question in this general area, sir.
Yeah. Well, we don't have anything substantiated that the city of Post Falls or Kootenai County had direct involvement in anything that was going on. Now, this hotel was sold to a local contractor, and a contractor does some pretty high-end development around the county. And, the way I found out about this was my wife and I were driving by one day, this old Red Lion hotel, and we noticed that there was a vinyl fence that was put all the way around the perimeter. And so we thought that was kind of interesting. And the very first thought I had was, who are they trying to screen?
Right.
Now, being a former law enforcement officer myself, my curiosity was piqued. And my wife and I drove through the parking lot, and what we found was immediately suspect. What we saw were dozens of early model vehicles, so they weren't newer. They were at least 20 years old, all parked in a section of the parking lot, and every last vehicle, we're talking, 20 to 30 vehicles total, all had Montana plates. And
Montana. Okay, good.
Yeah, they were all Montana plates. And so I immediately put out my feelers, and I asked local law enforcement, not only in my contacts at the Post Falls Police Department, but also the State Patrol and the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. Nobody seems to know really who those individuals are, why they were there. And we drove by the property a few more times. None of those vehicles appeared to have moved, just not even a skosh in several weeks. So to this day, we do not have answers. And it is something that I really would like to find out what the rest of the story is, so to speak.
So I'm curious, was that Red Lion Inn, was it what? I don't know, rebuilt, revitalized? They did a refreshing on it?
The new owner is a contractor, prevalent contractor in the area, apparently is buying these older hotels and then converting them into cheaper motels, if you will. That's my understanding. And so low income hotels, long stay hotels. So they're refurbishing them. And again, we don't know. We don't know whether or not there's any kind of agreements being made with NGOs, non-governmental organizations that had money to house. I heard one theory by a former trooper, a friend of mine, who said that those were individuals that had to come from Kalispell, Montana, and Missoula area and congregate over here because there is no more available rooms. And so they're merely seasonal workers that are there. But, again, we just don't know. But as you and I know, if it's a DLR, don't look right, then we need to be paying attention and we need to be following some of these leads to their logical conclusion.
Well, and the other thing is, you can't question the science. You can't question the medicine. You can't question anything. So say the DLG, Democrats, leftists, and globalists, except we've been shot in the head enough times to realize that when you think it's a conspiracy, sometimes it proves that, it's not really a conspiracy. So folks, we are talking to Dan Wilson, who ran for sheriff of my North Idaho county last year, a man who believes in true constitutional law enforcement. He's back for another run in 2028. And as I said, you have been keeping pretty good contact in terms of who's who in the Kootenai Zoo, to include Sheriff Bob Norris and other individuals. I happened to catch a little bit of your show yesterday, and it seems to me as though you were indicating something similar to, there's more going on. So maybe you can give us an update as to what's happening in terms of local politics, local law enforcement. Because if it's happening here, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's happening where you are too. That's the point of the show tonight, sir.
You know, Kootenai County is a unique, special place. And for decades, as I was growing up, it was a sleepy little county where the majority of the citizens were in agriculture. They were logging, miners, tradesmen. They went to the big city of Spokane, just 20 miles to the west, for shopping, entertainment, and medical. And then they retired back to the county of Kootenai to live. And it was a great place. But that great place was discovered back in the 90s by people from outside of the area. Property was cheap. And so it became either secondary homes for folks from the South, or it became their primary homes, and they were fleeing oppression. Now, fast forward about 20 years, right around 2020, this area became exceptionally lucrative to those that were fleeing from those California with a K states, and those states like Washington and Oregon, and even some from the East Coast that said, we're done with the tyranny and we want to go towards where freedom is. The only problem is that we've had such an influx. Now, I'm a kid that's been here my entire life in the region, right? I grew up right here. But over the past, decade, we've had so many folks settling up here that didn't have any real history, that when representatives run for local offices, nobody really knows who they are. And the people that are voting for them are new here. And so my belief is that what we have seen is, in essence, a takeover of local politics, political office, by folks that are not originally from here. And many of them, while they do love liberty, especially after what they witnessed during the 2020 COVID lockdowns and the summer of love and the Portland siege, they come up here and they think they're conservative, but they don't have a real foundation into the founders and the history of this country. And unfortunately, they don't do a good job at vetting who it is that's representing them. As you alluded to earlier, in the state of Idaho, we are ultra red by the numbers. When you look at who is representing us in the House, in the Senate, and of course in the governor's mansion, it's all red. However, the voting history of the state legislature and the immoral acts, my belief, that the governor took during COVID lockdowns would say that we are anything but a true conservative state. And I'm looking right now what's going on in the state legislature and some of the stupid bills, in my opinion, that they are promoting and pushing, introducing, rather than going towards those things that liberty-minded people, the protections that we need first and foremost. They don't seem to be pushing those as hard. So back to what's going on in Kootenai County. I believe that what I have witnessed over the past year and a half, and all the folks that I've come into contact with, and things that have been told to me by representatives and other elected officials, I'm led to believe that during the Obama years, Homeland Security decided to put its presence up in Kootenai County to kind of make certain that we all behaved, that they could control the right wing up here in Kootenai County. And I believe that a lot of our power players here in Kootenai County have ties to Homeland Security. Now, I'm hoping that with Kristi Noem here and with Trump and all the exposure that's taking place, that some of these people are going to be looking for new jobs. But I don't believe that we are as conservative up here as what people would tend to think.
Well, I know for a fact that there's it's not a field office. There's an RA, a resident agency up in Coeur d'Alene, if I'm not mistaken. And an RA is something similar to like an adjunct. If you have investigations to make way up in where all those evil white supremacists are, right, then that goes through the Coeur d'Alene RA up there.
And we have the Fusion Center over in Spokane.
Okay. Tell me about that. What is that?
Well, Fusion Center, of course, was created after 9/11 in order to disseminate information between all those that protect the United States. So CIA, FBI, U.S. attorneys, sheriff's office, police departments. So it's basically, a conglomerate of all sorts of law enforcement and how they work together under, the direction of Homeland Security. In fact, Bob Norris, the current sheriff, his last job at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, he was a lieutenant working specifically in the Homeland Security Division, JRIC, Joint Regional Intelligence Center. where he brags about handling resources like the FBI and the CIA. So he's very, very cozy. If you go back and look at the things that he has said while he's been in office for the past now, 4+ years, he is very, very cozy with his federal counterparts. And I think that he's way too cozy for the good of the citizens of this county. And Bruce Matari, his former campaign manager, who then became a county commissioner, has a special deputization that Bob Norris has given him. Is the only one of 3 county commissioners that holds this special deputization. He's also suspect. I mean, he came from out of nowhere from Washington, D.C. in about 2013. Several of our current electeds at one point lived in Virginia, around the D.C. area. So, we have, I believe, a lot of federal intrusion right here into Kootenai County. And I think that people are being conned because they'll listen to a guy that say, well, you know what? I won't ever enforce a Second Amendment law, while he also publicly lies. And we were able to confirm this when he said that he stood between a federal law enforcement agency and a citizen of Kootenai County regarding their gun rights. It never happened. But, a lot of gullible people just say there's an R by the name and he's a Republican, so therefore he has to be good. And I'm telling you, it is anything but good.
Let me say this, and you can reinforce this if it's accurate. I get the feeling, and I think I expressed this to you one of the last times as well. It seems like there are a lot of people that are conservatives or Republicans here in North Idaho. I can't speak for Boise or any place else. I don't live down there. I don't know the temper of those times. But it seems that there are a lot of people who have simply said or thought that, historically this area has always been red. It's always been a Republican. You don't really need my vote because I know that what's going to happen is there'll be another Republican that comes in and it's not necessary for me to go out, express myself, be a conservative, that kind of thing. Are there potentially, Dan Wilson, too many people up here in NOFE, N-O-F-E, Idaho, who are awfully assumptive, thinking that, somebody else will do it, Mm-hmm. They're all Republicans. They're all red. I'll be fine. I'll coast right along. Or I might way off.
No, I think you're spot on. What I have observed is too many people give lip service to liberty. Too many people give lip service that they are concerned about the state of affairs and that they claim that they want to be part of the solution. But guess what gets in their way? Kids' softball games and soccer games, and band practice and all the other things. And I'm not saying I'm the father of 5. My youngest is 17. The rest of them are all adults. I have a grandchild. So don't get me wrong. Family is very, very important. But if your outside activities are more important, that you're doing for your kids than securing their liberty with the form of government that you have, by not being involved, by not getting out and doing the hard work, then you're going to get exactly what we're experiencing. And I think that, this research that people have discovered from COVID has worked very, very well for folks that lived in tyrannical areas. But unfortunately, up here in Kootenai County, where, we weren't even wearing masks up here by, the middle of April. People were rebellious and just basically gave the finger and said, we're done. We're going to live our lives. We take it for granted. We think that, we're extremely safe up here. And I'm telling you, we are not. We aren't. This county right now is not ready for any kind of man-made or natural event that takes place. And we don't have, it appears we don't have any kind of government that has really a plan to help secure us from all sorts of hazards.
Okay, I was laughing because I have a story that you may giggle at too. Long time, well, it wasn't that long ago. 2021. Now, I retired in 2016. Mrs. BZ retired in 2021 also. And we were on we took numerous road trips to find out where do we want to go. We sure as shit don't want to be staying in California when we spell it with a K, because we've had enough of that crap. And all of our taxpayer money is being used against us.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, enough of that. That's done. So we make road trips. We go to the Staybridge Suites in Coeur d'Alene in 2021. And we walk in there, beautiful place. I would recommend it. Anybody coming up the CDA, we stayed there for a while, and we walk in. And okay, don't forget, we had just left California, masks. We had gone through Oregon, masks. And you had to wear a mask in the hotels that we were there. And so we went through Washington, masks. And we get into Idaho, and it's like, smell the freedom. We walk into the Staybridge Suites. We're wearing masks because we're thinking, well, we don't know. The first thing that occurs within 25 seconds is we walk in and some guy in a baseball hat is looking at us, goes, take that crap off. So we took that crap off, and instantly we knew this is our future home. Let's get the hell to it.
Yeah.
That's how we knew we were here. And then all sorts of other, besides the people being friendly. Okay, you know what I should do right now, folks? I should shut the hell up, because here's what I want you to focus on right now, folks. I moved Dan out of the equation so I can be serious just for a moment. Okay. The deal is there are way too many raptors up here in Idaho. If you have a cat or a dog, they're going to steal them and kill them. Also, the number of venomous rattlesnakes and venomous reptiles that are up here are legion. They are incredible. And you will have, if you hate scorpions, Idaho is not the place to be. And if you're in lakes and the rivers, there have been let loose numerous years ago these fish that are about like this, but they have teeth that are about like that. And Idaho is closed. It's not accepting anybody anymore. Don't even think about it. It's dangerous. It's unsafe, especially if you have kids. Now, I have spoken. And Dan says, yes, that's essentially true. We're going to be wrapping up this.
Huge spiders. Huge
spiders. Spiders?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is me doing this just for a second. I'm going to be looking into the camera, and I'm going to telling you, folks, here in Idaho, the spiders are the size of Buick Roadmasters.
They are. Yeah.
Not kidding. It's the truth, the absolute truth. So, Dan Wilson, I got to say this. I sort of have one final question, because you were leading up to it, and I thought, okay, I need to identify some things, and I'm hoping that you can help me identify them. After this period of time, I sold my house in 2021. I didn't think I'd be able to sell my house because it was up in the Sierra Nevada mountains at the 4,000 foot level. And I didn't think people were going to buy my house, because even then in 2021, there were serious allegations of, you know what, you're not going to be insured anymore. And as a matter of fact, when I called John Hughes, my farmer's insurance agent, and said, hey, John, I'm leaving, John said, thank God he was honest, and said, actually, it's a good thing you're leaving, because next year we're going to cancel your policy on your house. Okay, great, super, I'm leaving. I sold my house in 2021. I was shocked. We sold my wife's house in 2022 in Ghetto Central. And then I'm still kind of maybe sort of new to the area in terms of orienting politics, but there are a lot of state and local websites and organization touting themselves to be Republican or conservative. So what I'm intuiting, though, is that a lot of them are lying sacks of shit, and they're nothing but leftist fronts for people who want to turn this state blue, and or Republicans who despise Trump and they long for nothing more than the good old days when they actually had power and people listened to them. So I'm trying to still work my way through the lists of organizations that, and I'm not even talking about Republican. I'm talking about organizations that may be Republican, but they're mostly conservative. And maybe this is a question best asked off the program, but just kind of off the top of your brainulus. Are there any things that come to your mind where you can be pretty well assured that these organizations or individuals, groups are pretty conservative?
You know, I don't have any right now that come to mind regionally right here in Idaho. The unfortunate part is that we have organizations right here in Idaho that I've even questioned some of the things that they're doing. It's almost like they get it to a certain degree when it comes to the Constitution, and then they take a hard right turn. And I contend this all the time. I'm a born-again Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ since I was a very young lad. But I understand that our culture right now is not in line with our government. And so the things that you are enacting now, you may not want to be doing, because that legislation will come back to bite you tenfold. So we have to be looking at everything that we're doing in this government, trying to do the right things that adhere to the Constitution. But we also have to understand that until our nation turns back and decides that it's going to change part of its worldview, you cannot force people to adopt your religion. And so that's why I say I look at some of the conservative things that some of these organizations at the state level are doing, and they're great, but then they do something extremely boneheaded, and I'm just going, you're doing the exact same thing that you would get extremely irate if the left were doing it with their cause. So yeah, I level everything against the Constitution and the writings of the founders. That's really the best test as far as whether something passes the constitutional muster or not.
In reflection, in my way of thinking, that's a very sad commentary that someone who has lived here for a lengthy period of time, is conservative, bills himself and is a constitutional sheriff should he be elected, which was the gist of the whole show tonight, as a matter of fact. That off the top of your head, you can't think of one true rock solid organization that isn't comprised of leftist crap and draped in faux GOP cloth. That's a hell of a statement. I got to tell you at this point, I'm a little bit gobsmacked because of that. Hey, Dan Wilson, it's just about time for Tata. So is there anything that you would like to have spoken about tonight that we may have left out and or addressed? Because the other gig is I will always have you back on in the saloon. I would always love to have you. And let me do this right now while I'm still thinking about it. I couldn't find liberty without compromise. I don't know why. It's maybe my fingers aren't reacting properly, but here's your Twitter spot right there. Dan D.W. Wilson on Twitter, the Idaho Sheriff. And there are a lot of posts that are under here right now. Hey, look, there's a fat guy standing with a really tall guy. And boy, do I look like I'm a gnome. Who's the 5'2" gnome standing back?
You look like the Oracle. You look like an Oracle.
Right next to the actual, this actual American. You have your own show. All the information is right down here under Twitter. So, like I say, at this point, anything that you would like to have covered that we somehow neglected or failed to do?
I think that we covered a full spectrum. And of course, this is an ongoing dialogue that you and I have. And so I'm looking forward already to my next time where I get to be back in the saloon, tipping back my favorite beverage. But, I would just say this. Folks, when you look at the political spectrum right now, 6 months ago, we were in pretty dire straits. Everybody was extremely depressed. And then this thing happened. And against all odds, Donald J. Trump was able to overcome the cheats and was sworn in, survived several assassination attempts, and is now the sitting president. And man, what he has done in the past several weeks to expose corruption in the swamp, that's great. But remember, 4 years goes by very, very quick. And right now is not the time to sit back and enjoying the show with your popcorn and thinking that, hey, you know what? I can go back to my normal life. You have to be as vigilant now as you were back 4 years ago. In fact, you have to be even more so because somebody has to replace Donald Trump that has the same ideas and the conviction and the stones to continue this thinning out of the federal bureaucracy, and then that needs to take place in our states. Idaho takes 40% of our budget from the freaking federal government, and it comes down to the county as well. Oh yeah,
40%.
40% of our budget. Yeah.
Can you imagine, folks? Just if I can interject just for a moment, can you imagine what Idaho could do with 40% of that budget returned to the state? And you would have so much more direct influence and say over what happens to that money. I had no idea that it was that large, 40%.
Yeah, I think now is the time to go to resources like Hillsdale College, and they have the free online courses on the Constitution. You need to start in bite-sized chunks, becoming very, very familiar with those documents and truly understand the power behind those documents and what you need to be lifting up right here. Don't wait for your state legislators to do it, because there's a lot of state legislators that are dumber than a box of rocks. I'm just going to say it.
Yes.
They are. They say they can say things, and they can introduce bills, but you listen to them and you understand these people don't really have a clue about what liberty and what the founders really had to say. So be vigilant right now, and don't let up on the throttle. Let's continue to push for liberty without compromise.
Absolutely. That's all throttle, no brake, don't stop. This is just the beginning. And so thank you ever so kindly, Dan Wilson, for being here tonight. You will be back if you're kind enough to accede and say, okay, fat guy, I'll come back.
I love it. And we are due a good cigar together again.
As a matter of fact, I would suggest that is true. Folks, that was Dan Wilson. I'm BZ. You're in the saloon. I want to remind folks of this. I do this late. I shouldn't be doing it late. I should have this nailed to my heart at this point. But I want to remind everybody of these shows. Edge of Liberty on SHR, Monday and Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Also, The Reaver of Common Sense, Monday and Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. My show, BZX, actually gets to promote his show Tuesday and Thursday nights right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. And also, I would like to mention Mission Ready Men. This is Earl Jackson, Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and noon Eastern. And then the gentleman who has been very kind to us, and that is Rick Robinson. And thanks to him, his show, The Rick Robinson Show, is on Tuesday through Friday, noon to 3 p.m. Pacific, 2 to 5 Central, and 3 to 6 Eastern. I hope that I haven't left anyone out except for this one thing. An individual called me and said, can you remind folks that we need some prayers? And so this is me saying that we could use some prayers for people that have been on SHR, that are in need of your ministrations. The newest individual is Jeff Mitchell. He is currently in Ipswich Hospital in the UK. He's 74. He has emphysema. He had bypass surgery. He's in for malnutrition, exhaustion, and now has a broken leg, which he did not have before he entered UK hospitals. Also, prayers for our great friend of SHR, Lonnie Poindexter, who's recuperating at home from heart surgery from December of last year. He's getting better every day. And finally, for our good friend, Ken McClenton of TECN TV, who had a series of strokes in 2023. He is still fighting desperately for a semblance of recovery. He could really, really use our prayers. So blessings and prayers for you all.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks so kindly for listening to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon tonight on the radio, right here on Rumble, the SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, and the SHR Media Rumble channel. Promotional consideration, as per normal, is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Squunk? Yes, the Squunk Works. There are too many squunks in here, damn it. By Shure and Electro Voice microphones, Arrakis boards, and also by Pratt & Whitney engines, they are producing thrust you can trust. And as per normal, my tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my guest tonight, Dan Wilson. Grandly appreciate it. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than 10 minutes, just a couple of feet kind of down the road, and hang a left. And don't step on the dog, please, if you would. God bless my father, passed away February 11th, 16 years ago. Thanks to each and every one. Thanks to Dan Wilson. Thanks to the people who are watching live and also who are watching here in podcast. God bless you all. Take care and be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.